Viralnater presents historical gay figures that tried to conceal that they were gay. Despite what many people think, homosexuality has been very common since the beginning of time. Since the beginning of written history, different countries have had historical figures who may have been gay. Most of you probably learned about these people in school. Some people were very open about it in their time, while others were more private, especially if it was against the law where they lived. The people listed here are famous authors, writers, artists, royal figures, leaders, and even the President of the United States. Eleanor Roosevelt. In history books, Eleanor Roosevelt is called one of the most important first ladies of the United States. But behind the scenes, things were a little more difficult. In the 1920s, her husband, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, had an affair with his maid. This caused a permanent split in their marriage. However, they agreed to stay together for the sake of their jobs and public image. Eleanor found letters between the president and his secretary that showed that they were having an affair. Then, Eleanor started dating Lorena Hickok, a writer who wasn't afraid to say what she thought about girls being gay. They were always together and wrote each other thousands of letters, which led researchers to think that they were the perfect couple for each other. Jane Addams. There is no doubt that Jane Addams was a lesbian in these modern times. She was a well-known feminist and social worker, and her first relationship may have been with another campaigner, Ellen Starr. Jane Addams started a home for refugees in Chicago with Starr. The name of the settlement house was Hull House. After that relationship ended, Addams started dating Mary Rosette Smith, who was very rich and worked to help people. When asked, they said they were married after moving in together. It was only after Mary died in 1934 that they stopped writing each other when they were apart. Gertrude Stein. It's said that Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas had one of the most famous relationships in modern American writing. They fell in love the day after Toklas moved to Paris in 1907. They put on literary parties where famous people like Ernest Hemingway and Pablo Picasso would hang out. They moved in together after 2 years. During the 1920s and 1930s, they used their fame and money to explore the world together. They had to move to a house in the French woods when World War II broke out. After Toklas died in 1946, they stayed together as a couple. The fact that Toklas left Stein most of her wealth does not change the fact that they were legally married in France. Stein had a hard time with money for the rest of her life because of this. James Dean. People argued about James Dean's sexuality all through his career, and they still do now that he's dead. During the height of his acting career, when teenage pinups were loved by both men and women around the world, there were several reports that he was seeing other male actors. It was interesting that Dean never rejected the story directly. He'd say, "No, I'm not a gay person, but I'm also not going to live my life with one hand tied behind my back," when asked about it. After his sudden death in a car accident, the stories got stronger, but there hasn't been any solid proof of this. It would still be interesting, but not as crazy as it was before. Greta Garbo. Many people knew Greta Garbo as an actress during the silent movie era. She did not, however, follow the lead of most of her peers. She quit early at age 35 and lived a quiet life away from the fame of Hollywood. Of course, people were naturally interested and started to look around right away. Even though she dated a few men in her life, there were reports that she was seeing women after she died of pneumonia in 1990. During the reports, names like Mimi Pollock, Salka Vertel, Lillian Tashman, and Louise Brooks came up. Later, letters she sent to Mimi Pollock were found, which proved the claims that they were dating. These days, Garbo would probably say that she's gay. Alan Turing. People know Alan Turing as the person who helped the Allies win World War II and end it 2 years early. His intelligence broke the German code and helped the Allies figure out their strikes and plans, which helped them plan for battles, protect better, and fight back. Turned out that he was gay, though, and the government stopped doing business with him. He was charged with gross indecency in 1952 and was given the option of getting hormone treatments or going to jail. He picked the first option, and the shots made him weak and a shell of the man he used to be. After only 2 years, he killed himself. In 2009, he received an unofficial public apology from the British government. In 2013, Queen Elizabeth II, who took over as Queen of Great Britain 2 years before Turing had died, gave him a posthumous pardon. Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci's famous picture of Mona Lisa and other women are famous all over the world. Rumors that he was gay add to the wonder of this famous artist. Historians believe that these stories started with 2 sodomy charges against him, but since Florence was a center for gay life in Europe, it makes sense. Even though the stories have mostly been proven true, hundreds of years after his death there is still a lot of disagreement about whether he was open about his sexual choice or whether he preferred to keep it quiet, likely because he was accused of sodomy. Even the famous psychologist Sigmund Freud said that da Vinci's works show that he was gay and didn't come out as such. James Buchanan. There hasn't been an LGBTQ president of the United States yet, but historians think that James Buchanan, the 15th president, was gay. One important thing they point out in their ideas about why he might have been gay is that James Buchanan never got married. He is the only U.S. president who's never been married. He lived with Senator William Rufus King for most of his adult life. The two were known as Miss Nancy and Aunt Fancy in Washington, and stories were going around about what kind of relationship they had and how serious it was. Another important sign was that the families of both men may have done a lot to get rid of proof of their letters, so they did everything they could to keep their relationship quiet. Rock Hudson. Hudson was a big name in Hollywood in the middle of the 20th century. He was known for playing charming parts in movies like Giant and Pillow Talk. His domestic life, on the other hand, was kept secret. Hudson hid the fact that he was gay because that was the norm at the time, especially in Hollywood. People only found out he was gay near the end of his life when he was diagnosed with AIDS in the early 1980s. This had a big effect because it brought attention to the AIDS problem and made the disease seem more like a real illness, which challenged the negative ideas people had about it. Hudson died in 1985 from the effects of AIDS, which was sad, but it changed how people thought about both AIDS and the LGBTQ+ community. Marlon Brando. Many people may find Marlon Brando's name strange because he's known for sleeping with other women. In his later years, though, he admitted that he had started dating guys. He revealed it in an interview in 1976, saying, "Being gay is so cool these days that it doesn't even make the news. A lot of guys, including myself, have had gay situations and I'm not ashamed of it. What other people think of me doesn't bother me much. But if there's someone who thinks Jack Nicholson and I are dating, they should say that. I think it's funny." He was said to be related to Wally Cox, the comic Richard Pryor, and even Laurence Olivier. Marlon Brando, gay is in fashion. His work lasted 60 years, and he won a lot of awards including 2 Oscars, 3 BAFTAs, and 2 Golden Globes. Marlon Brando has had sex with both men and women while he was in movies. While Brando was married 3 times, he's said to have dated Cary Grant, Montgomery Clift, Sir John Gielgud, Rock Hudson, and most notably, James Dean. When Brando talked to Gary Carey in 1976, he said, "Homosexuality is so in style that it no longer makes the news. Like a lot of guys, I've had gay experiences and I'm not ashamed of them. I've never really cared what other people think of me." A director named Quincy Jones told Vulture in 2018 that Brando would be happy to have sex with anyone. He'd F a mailbox. Mr. James Baldwin, Mr. Richard Pryor, a Marvin Gaye. Richard Pryor's sexual escapades with Marlon Brando. Lennox Richard Franklin, the late Thomas Pryor, was an American stand-up comedian, actor, and author. He had a hard time with drugs, and while he was high, he even set himself on fire. Pryor had 7 kids, and they were born to 5 different women. He was married 7 times to 5 different women. In 2005, he had a heart attack and died. In 2018, one of Pryor's ex-wives told TMZ that he had slept with Marlon Brando in the 1970s, saying, "It was the 70s. If you did enough cocaine, you'd F a radiator and send it flowers in the morning." Also, in an interview with Vulture, Quincy Jones talked about Marlon Brando's sexual adventures and said that Richard Pryor was one of them. He said that Brando and Pryor had been close. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon